All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining tonight to hear about some of the bills that we'll be talking about on Environmental Day at the Capitol and beyond. There are going to be a lot more bills that I talk about than you will be able to speak with legislators about. I think picking maybe three, depending on how long you have to meet with them, probably four bills tops will be the limit. And sometimes people only talk about one bill in their meetings, and that's fine too. The main thing is that they hear from you, they hear from you on issues that you care about, and you have the experience of connecting with your legislators. If issue one of the bills that is really important to you, you don't have an opportunity to speak with them about it, set up a follow-up meeting with them, and we can help you with that as well. So with that, let's go. Okay, this is just me. I just wanted to make sure everyone knows who I am. Sandy Barr. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Central Phoenix on Accomal, O'odham, and Peeposh lands. And I grew up in northern Michigan. Those are traditional Ottawa lands, but I have lived in the Sonoran Desert most of my life. I love the Sonoran Desert. That's why I'm here. And I've now been with Sierra Club for 27 years and do a range of advocacy types of work. And for our work, I just wanted to note that we try to center our work on the HEMES principles of democratic organizing, being inclusive, emphasizing bottom-up organizing, working together in solidarity, mutuality, and committing to self-transformation. In our chapter, we also have some equity values that we encourage our volunteers to review and sign on to. And just a quick, note about the legislative session. By the time we meet on February 12th, it will have been in session for about a month. And it is supposed to end the end of April in about 100 days, but there's no constitutional requirement for that. We've had the state of the state. The governor has come out with her budget. The legislators have not. And there have been a lot of really bad bills introduced, and just a lot of bills overall. It's been really hard to track and follow them all. So it's going to be a challenging legislative session. All right. Well, let's kind of jump into it. And I will note I'm trying to provide a mix of positive as well as the bill, the harmful bills that we're fighting. Some of these positive bills will have a tough time because the chairs of the committee generally are unwilling to hear them. But that doesn't mean that we should stop talking about these issues. And one of the things that I think it's important for us to continue to talk about is climate change. Even today in committee, I was speaking on a wind energy bill, and I used it as an opportunity to talk about climate change. Even though they're maybe not particularly friendly to that issue, it's still important that they know that we think it's important and to hear about it. It doesn't mean that it has to be the very first thing you talk about, but I think it is good to include it in some of the reasons that that you're coming to the Capitol. And so these three bills are positive bills. The first two, House Bill 2161 and SB 1388, they're exactly the same. So that's why they're put together like that. And they repeal provisions that are currently in statute that prohibit state agencies from taking any action to measure or reduce greenhouse gas emissions without the legislature expressly telling them they can. So that means our Department of Environmental Quality, Department of Transportation, all these entities can't do something to measure or reduce these emissions unless the legislature passes a bill to tell them that they can. 2486 establishes the Governor's Office of Resiliency. That office exists, but it exists because Governor Hobbs created it. It does not exist in the statutes. And the other thing this bill does, it directs it to do some things, including to address the threat of climate change to water and natural resources. The Office of Resiliency is doing that work, but this would, if it passed, would have it in statute, and therefore the next governor would have the Office of Resiliency. This bill also includes the provisions of the bills above 2161 and 1388. It repeals that prohibition on measuring and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And then the last one is a very simple renewable energy standard, 50% by 2035. We all know we should be doing more, but it is much higher than our current standard, which is 15% by 2025. So that is something that Senator Sundaration had used to have in a resolution, and she decided to do it as a bill this year. All right, and then we do have this year extreme heat as part of our theme. One of the reasons we wanted to include it is because we're seeing more and more people die from extreme heat, and also the funding for some of the relief measures is going away. And of course, we know that even though it's always hot here, it's definitely getting hotter, and the heat waves more intense due to climate change. So just need to keep that in mind, and have that be part of what we're talking about. These bills deal mostly with working conditions for outdoor workers. And the first one has specific requirements for employers, and then the second one mandates the Industrial Commission to establish rules. And the rules for the second one also cover indoor workplaces related to agriculture, construction, landscaping, oil and gas extraction, and deliveries. So a lot of heat deaths and a lot of heat illnesses happen to outdoor workers. So these are some bills that have been introduced. And then we'll also be asking folks to just advocate for extreme heat relief funding. And that's funding that can go to communities to help have these heat relief stations open in more places, have them be open at night. This past year was the first year that Phoenix had any of those open at night. And with our nighttime temperatures continuing to be very high, people their bodies never have a chance to recover from the hot daytime. And so they go into the next day ill-equipped to deal with the extreme heat. So anyway, these are some bills that you can consider lobbying on, and then this is just an ask to include funding in the state budget for heat relief programs as the federal dollars have gone away on that. All right, and then this, I know it's just all words, I apologize, but there were just so many bills and I didn't want to do, oops, the people in the waiting room were hidden behind the bar there. Sorry, folks who just joined, you were hidden behind the bar here, and so I didn't see you were there.
It's okay.
Whoops, I gotta go back again. So anyway, these are some of the bad climate, energy, and transportation bills. And because transportation is such a big contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, I really didn't need to include transportation, but I just wanted to make it clear that some of these relate to energy, renewable energy, and coal and gas, and then others relate to transportation. And the first one on this list was up today in committee, House Bill 2223. It is a bill to block construction of windmills, wind farms. It is, in addition to requiring the indemnification provisions, it basically says you can't construct a wind farm if you're within 6 miles of private property unless you've gotten permission from the private property owners. It also says you can't construct them within 12 miles of a residential area. No, we do not have those same restrictions on coal and gas plants, so it's kind of interesting to me that something that emits no pollution is they're trying to block. But of course, it did go through committee, so it'll be in the mix when you're at the Capitol next week. It'll probably be getting ready to go to the floor, and would be a good bill to talk to legislators about. House Bill 2527 is a measure that basically would cause fossil fuel generation to run longer. It prohibits the Corporation Commission from authorizing power plant retirement unless there's a new plant with equal or greater generation. And it requires the replacement resources to be thermal. Now, granted, there is some solar thermal, but most of what we have for solar is not. It's photovoltaic, so it would primarily be gas, coal, or nuclear. And oh yeah, and it specifically precludes them, I guess, from being renewable overall. There are a couple of bills that seek to block projects on state trust lands if they have any impact on a grazing lease. They require payment for all kinds of alleged losses. And this 2543, that bill's been around for a few years, and it has died mostly in the House. So hopefully that will happen again. But again, something that would make it more difficult to cite renewables, and probably has some constitutional issues, especially relative to state trust lands, because if the state land commissioner decides something is the highest and best use for those lands, then they're, obligated to allow it. House Bill 2679 is a fairly complicated bill. It's about a financing mechanism for utilities. We don't oppose the mechanism overall, but in this bill, it's very broad. It allows them to securitize just about anything. In fact, they were asked in committee today if there was anything that could they name anything they couldn't securitize, and they couldn't. So it can be used for lost fuel costs. And one of the concerns that we have about that is that it'd be like double dipping because they already have a mechanism for recovering lost fuel costs. There's also really no accountability in the bill for these monopoly utilities, and there's no sunset date. So meaning there's no date when it would end. And then these are a couple of the transportation bills. 1086 basically emphasizes congestion management and promotes that above other provisions, meaning that they want ADOT to focus on building more lanes and more roads, and it prohibits having any kind of vehicle mile reduction traffic or vehicle mile traveled reduction or any kind of demand management policy to project and reduce traffic. And then 1092 and SCR 1004 are also limits on, or they prohibit any kind of limits on vehicle miles traveled, travel reduction programs, and travel reduction programs are important parts of our air quality efforts because a huge factor in ozone pollution, for example, is vehicle traffic. So this is a problem for that reason, but also reducing vehicle miles traveled makes our streets safer as well. And then the last one, 1113, requires utilities to have the right of first refusal for any renewable energy project. So say there was someone that wanted to do a solar project, the utility would have to be asked if they wanted to do it first before the project could go forward. So it could be a way for utilities to block renewables and would certainly slow down those moving forward. All right. I didn't go too forward, did I? I don't think so. Let me double check. Yeah, that's the one I just said. Okay. Sorry, I thought I jumped forward too. All right, and then the next thing I wanted, oops, two people. I don't know why this keeps hiding under there. Wait till I get in. Hey folks, just joining. I just wanted to let you know, sorry if you were in the waiting room for a bit. The bar keeps covering where that there are people waiting. So, and Anna couldn't join tonight, so maybe I can move this bar a little bit. There we go. All right. So there are some positive water bills too. If people want to talk about water, there House Bill 2249. This strengthens our state's water quality program, and it includes higher standards and actual protections for ephemeral waters. And ephemeral waters are just those waters that don't flow year round. So waters like desert washes and such, those were protected under the Clean Water Act at one time, but through some bad Supreme Court decisions, they're not. And so we would like to see them protected under our state's program. So that's 2249. House Bill 2478. This deals with areas, they're called irrigation non-expansion areas. And when those are established, you can't add new agricultural land, new acres of irrigated agriculture in that area. I'm hearing a little bit of background. If someone's not muted, if you could mute, that'd be great. And then, so that bill, right now, the Department of Water Resources can only consider current impacts and not look at future impacts when establishing one of these areas. So it means they get established too late. And so this bill would allow them to be established earlier. House Bill 2480 and 1252 are bills that help to establish water for nature, basically, ecological water. So if someone has a water right, they could actually transfer it to the environment, to a river, a stream, and to help keep it flowing. 2481 is about requiring adequate water for development statewide, something that seems like should be a no nonsense, no, how could anyone object to that? But it's always been very controversial. And then the last bill is House Bill 2644, and it establishes a rainwater harvesting program with smaller grants of $500 and somewhat larger grants of $2,000. And it would be administered by the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority. So I think it's loosely, I think, modeled on the Tucson program, but hopefully it has some Republicans on the bill. It's a Democratic bill, but it has some Republicans on there, so it might actually get a hearing. And as always, there are a lot of harmful water bills. They're in a nutshell, most of these bills are either trying to get around assured water supply requirements for development in active management areas, and that's what an AMA is, or they are trying to get rid of these subsequent active management areas. And you'll see there are 3 bills on here that relate to subsequent active management areas. Whoops, I don't know why that flipped. The subsequent, the word subsequent means these active management areas were established after the original 5 active management areas. And so when it says subsequent, it relates to Douglas and Wilcox, so only the active management areas in southern Arizona. But if they got this through, then it would affect any others that are established in the future. And there are different ways that they are trying to allow people to remove areas from an AMA, get rid of the AMA after 10 years, which again, if you establish an AMA, if you've had overpumping of groundwater and you're like, okay, well, we're not pumping as much now, and then you take away the AMA, you're probably going to start having more groundwater pumping and be back with the same problem. So once these are in place, we want them to stay in place, to try to stabilize the aquifers. And that is also the problem with House Bill 2570 is it's a temporary a way to limit irrigated acres of agriculture, and but it would go away after a certain period of time. So those are just a few of the bills we've seen so far. I I do expect that if they pass, that the governor would veto most of these. And I wanted to touch on democracy and voting rights. There also are a lot of harmful bills in this area. Most of them are targeting early voting, prohibiting voting centers. So voting centers mean there's more access and more places for people to vote on election day. And if you go to a voting center, and it's not like with precinct voting, where if you go to a precinct voting center and you're in the wrong one, your vote isn't going to count for at least some of the, or you would have to vote a provisional ballot, and it's likely not to count. And then early on-site voting as well is prohibited in these bills. One of them, the HCR 2002, would refer it to the ballot. When you see HCR or SCR, a lot of times they are referrals. So we've seen a lot more bills that also have a referral, an HCR, with it because they want to get around the governor. And so that is one of the reasons your ballot was so long in this last election, is because they referred a bunch of stuff to get around her. The early 2703 moves up the deadline for early ballot return to 7 p.m. on Friday before the election. And then if you have an early ballot that you're taking on election day, instead of just being able to drop it off, you would have to show ID. It also eliminates emergency voting. 1152 would shorten the amount of time to vote early from 27 to 21 days. And then HCR 2013 and 2673, again, it sounds like it's about foreign money in elections, but there are new voter ID requirements and other similar provisions to House Bill 2017. Environmental justice, we have a couple of bills we're supporting. Oh, seriously, I need to adjust this so it's not so touchy. One has to do with identifying overburdened communities, those communities that get the most pollution, and actually taking action, doing environmental justice impact statements. And then the Department of Environmental Quality can deny or place condition on permits due to the disproportionate impact based on those assessments. So we don't really have any environmental justice provisions in our statutes, and it's something over the years there have been various bills, and unfortunately none of them have moved. And then the last one there is a constitutional amendment. It basically says everyone, including someone who is part of a future generation, has a right to a clean and healthy environment. And there's a provision in the Montana Constitution, something like that, that helped contribute to the successful climate litigation that some young people had there. And then just quickly there, I just added this one. So it had to, hopefully there aren't major typos, but um, there are some harmful land and wildlife bills. 1068 requires the governor and the legislature to approve any sale or transfer of private land to the federal government. It's been around for a long time and been vetoed by Republicans and Democrats, but it's back. It's sponsored by Senator Mark Finchem. I think he sponsored it when he was in the legislature previously. And so that's a measure we're opposing because, of course, it would hinder efforts, to protect headwaters for rivers or streams or consolidate lands for wildlife or wildlife corridors, those types of things. 2083 requires a rancher on the Game and Fish Commission. They have a significant conflict of interest with the commission because of their efforts to advocate for killing predators and also considering, elk and deer competition. 2552 would prohibit Game and Fish from adopting rules to allow hound hunting or adopting rules that should say, it should say prohibits Game and Fish from adopting rules to limit, not allow, hound hunting of wildlife. Sorry, there was a typo. And this has come up because there has been a petition that we were part of to limit hunting mountain lions and bobcats and other wildlife with hounds. It doesn't affect the using hounds for birds and stuff like that, but the ones where they use them to run them down. So anyway, that this would keep Game and Fish from doing that. And then the last one would give permits to landowners for elk or antelope, deer, and we've always opposed that because it's a way of privatizing wildlife. It makes it more like the system that they have in some, more like, the landowners own the wildlife system. So anyway, that is what I have. And I didn't see any hands go up during, but there may have been. I'm going to try to stop sharing slides to take your questions now. And it looks like maybe there were some in the chat. Was that too many bills? I know it's a lot of bills. I just wanted to kind of give an overview, but again, you'll get some handouts with the bills on them, and your team can decide, okay, we're going to focus on this bill or we're going to focus on that bill. You don't have to consider all of them, and especially, I know there are a couple maybe that are a little more confusing. And I try to simplify bills, but I know I'm not always successful in doing that. So I don't mind if someone says, hey, I would appreciate if you would, explain this a little bit better. So I don't take it personally if it's not clear. Oh, that was just a personal note. Okay. Yes. Okay. Robert is, I think, the first question. With so many bad bills, how about handing legislators the guide to good and bad bills, perhaps with a paragraph or two of reasoning? That is something that we could do. We usually just hand them like a one pager, and it does include, some good and bad bills on it, but we could consider limiting it a little bit more and add a little bit more background. Um, oh, Rick asked about a bill that I didn't talk about because it was just introduced, Rick, and I didn't have time. That was, I think, one of the bills that was just introduced. Um, but I'll take a look at that. It was 1501. Let's see. Well, let's see. Someone is saying, per my dissertation, well over 90% of our state's streams are ephemeral or intermittent, protecting the water that flows through them is really important. Yes, I agree. And we have tried to get in the original statute that was established for protected Arizona waters, we tried really hard to get ephemeral waters in there because, yeah, that's what most of our water is. And so with the recent Supreme Court decision, or I guess not so recent anymore, but the most recent one on the Clean Water Act, most of our waters in Arizona lack protections. And so that's why we would really like this bill to go forward. And your favorite is Canyon Creek. All right. Yes, I will have these slides available in a PDF format if I can ever get access to the program where I can send them all to you. I will do that. All right, that was about someone's audio. I think I did turn that off. Someone was asking about 2367. I'm trying to remember which one that is. I'll have to go back and look. I will. Yes, there's a bunch of questions about the slides. Just a thought, if our governor's expected to veto the bad ones, is it better use of our time to talk more about the good ones to our legislators? Oh, that's a great question, Tina. The reason it's important to still talk to them about the bad ones is the governor is, she's probably not going to veto all of them, and we would like to stop some of the bad ones in the legislature. But also, if there's bipartisan support for any of these bills, that makes it a lot harder for her to veto them. So we want to make sure that there is not bipartisan support for the bad bills to the greatest degree possible. But a good question. Yeah, the legislature, someone was noting there a lot because the legislature is busy. Over the last few years, they have just started where they just introduce so many bills. And it's hard for all of us to keep up with it. And it used to be like the committee agendas would have like, I don't know, 6 or 7 bills. Now they have 14, 15, maybe 20 bills on agendas. And it's hard for legislators to give those bills the kind of consideration they should have when they have that many bills coming at them all at once. Someone said they suspect they had help writing these bills. Yes, we saw some of those today. Arizona Public Service, APS, our state's largest utility, wrote one of the bills we were talking about today, House Bill 2679, and actually wrote a bill we talked about yesterday too. So, yes. let's see, if we have a generally good delegation, would you recommend focusing more on swatting down bad bills or being enthusiastic about the good ones? I think it's good to mention a couple of the bad ones because even folks who are generally good, it's helpful for them to know their constituents care about those issues. But if they happen to be, I didn't have the sponsors on all of these tonight, but in the handout, it'll have who the bill sponsors are. And if your legislators happen to be someone who sponsored one of the good bills, I think it is super helpful to mention that and thank them because that's, they don't get thanked enough when they're doing the right thing. So thanking is as important when they're doing the right thing, is it as important as letting them know when they're not doing the right thing. So should we talk to the bills related to what committees our members are on? Some of these bills will already be headed to the floor. So no, I think a lot of what we're talking about is floor action. But if you happen to have a legislator who sits on like the Natural Resources, Energy and Water Committee or the Land, Agriculture, Rural Affairs, there might be a couple of bills you would want to focus on with them that are related to those committees. Oh, whoops, sorry. Why? It seems to be frozen. Oh, that was a question for folks. Yeah, if there's anybody on an LD 22, Andres Garcia is interested. There is someone coming who I can connect you with. Nancy Meister is asking about 2714. Nancy, do you want to come off mute and tell me which bill that is? I don't have all the numbers memorized yet.
Oh, sorry. That's the rural groundwater bill
Oh,
from the governor.
yes. I didn't include those bills because they just got dropped, but our take is that they have some good things. So House Bill 2714 has some good things in it. It would apply conservation requirements relative to groundwater pumping to industrial, residential, and agriculture. So it's not, just one entity, and it establishes like 5 initial groundwater management areas, and they would have to reduce groundwater pumping 10% over 10 years. That isn't enough, but it is what they thought they could that there wouldn't be as much opposition, I guess, to that. And they really, want to get something through to help in these places where there is no groundwater management at all. There are, and then there are like 4 periods where they are, 4 10-year periods where they're reducing groundwater. The first one is 10%, and then as it goes farther out, it can be 5 to 10%, depending on what's happening in the basin. There are a number of provisions that are not required. Like if an area meets the conditions, like there's subsidence and water quality issues because the people's wells, they're having to go so deep for their wells, we wanted it to say that the Department of Water Resources had to initiate the process for establishing one of these rural groundwater management areas. And it says that the director may. And so there are some things like that, but it seems like it would be a step forward relative to limiting groundwater pumping, at least in some areas. Um, what we're probably going to do is take the approach of this is a good start, but it needs to be stronger. So I know that's a kind of a complicated, long answer, and I'm very sorry. Uh, should we talk to the bills related to, oh, I went back to your question, Rhonda, sorry. Um, one pager might be front, good, bad, back. Yeah, yeah, that's a good idea. We from Catherine, so I like that suggestion. Flashcards, yes, we can try that. Um, Janet is very excited about the rainwater harvesting bill. I knew you would be. Yes, I do have the latest version. I'll send it to you, Janet. So anyway, I was thinking of you right when I was talking about that. Uh, oh, yes, request to speak, which we didn't talk about. Sorry. Did I miss any questions? Because if I did, I'm going to just encourage you to come off mute because I might have. Oh, looks like someone answered in the chat about how do you find out what committees each legislator's on. Yeah, the legislature's website has a lot of information, and we have a couple minutes. I could go and share. Let me go to the legislature's website real quick and show everybody a little bit about it. I think, let's see. All right, hopefully you're seeing the legislature's website. And so there's stuff down here you can find like requests to speak, but someone was asking about committees. This can give you an overview of the committees if you want. So let's see. Let's go up here to federalism. And oh, I gotta move this. That's the bad thing about Zoom. You have those little bars that get in the way. But anyway, so it tells you who's on it, who's the chair, who's the vice chair. And then you can also see all the agendas there as well. Also, you can put any of the bill numbers in. So let's see. And you can find the bill itself here. You can see who's for or against here. This was a utility bill. We were against. There's a video of when it was heard in committee. So if you were like, oh man, I wish I would have saw that committee hearing, that's right here. And of course, the bill status. And then if you just want at a glance an overview, tells you that as well. What else? Oh yeah, all the members So if you click here, there's a member roster, so you will see if you page down, the Senate's on here too, and if you click on the name of the legislator, it'll take you to, usually they have a bio, and then it'll also tell you all the bills they sponsored. And then if you click over here, it'll automatically email for them. But it tells you right here, like, you know, it's the first letter of their first name and then their last name at azledge.gov most of the time, except for very common names like Smith. So those are different. Like I know Amanda Smith, who is one of the legislators' assistants, Senator Hataples, I think, is A.R. Smith. Yeah, and anyway, so if you keep going, then you'll also get to the Senate down there, and you can, if you click on there, I don't know if Seth Blattman has a bio on here or not. No, yeah. Sometimes they just don't put anything on there, but then you can see all the bills they've sponsored. If you're looking for the statutes, like you want to actually look something up, the Arizona Revised Statutes are here, state constitution. We already did bills. We talked about committees. Oh, one other thing I'll show you on here is, and I have to move this. So here is its calendar and news. There is a calendar that is Alice Today, Capital Events. So if you go down here, it will tell you what bills are coming up or what committees are coming up. So like tomorrow, there's House Judiciary, House Government Committee, and you can click on it and see the agenda. There's also a link for watching it. And one other thing you can see, if you click this little salmon colored thing that says Capitol Events, it'll tell you who's having what events at the Capitol. Like tomorrow is Western Rivers Day. And then here, why doesn't it say? Oh, it's supposed to say Environmental Day at the Capitol. I'll have to get them to fix that. I thought it said Environmental Day. Anyway, it's supposed to be Environmental Day at the Capitol there. But that's always handy to know who's doing what at the Capitol. So anyway, that's just a quick tour of the legislature's website, and you can check it out at your leisure. It's azleg.gov. Let's see if there are any other questions that came in. Oh, so if my rep has sponsored a bill, but there has been no action on it, no votes, then it is not in play, like 2162. No, the deadline for hearing bills has not passed yet. I'll send you the deadlines, but they still have a couple weeks yet. But once that deadline passes, then the bill would be dead. Although there are ways to bring back bills that are dead. All right, looks like folks are starting to take off at 7. Thank you all. Anything else? I'm happy to stay on for just a minute or two if anyone has any other questions. All right. Well, have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thanks for joining, and don't hesitate to reach out with additional questions. And like I said, we'll be sending out some more info. Take care.